Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the ninth film by Quentin Tarantino. It is a story about appreciating the things and people that are overlooked in life. As Tarantino has said, it's about reminiscing about a time when the car radio had only one volume setting, and to speak to other passengers you had to shout over the radio. Rather than decry this time as full of backward technology and lacking modern day sophistication, Tarantino instead makes an ode to this era. And besides, who cares when the car radio has only one very loud volume setting when it was playing music that came out in the 60s? I can see this being a bigger problem in the modern day when we would be tortured at the tonsils of Lizzo and Megan Thee Stallion, but I digress. Much was made of this movie depicting a world that no longer exists. Some call this picture Tarantino's indulgence, that he simply created a theme park for himself full of his favourite things and took us on a tour of it. This is true, and of course there doesn't have to be anything wrong with this. I would say that this is an example of indulging in the right thing, given that Hollywood in the 60s was one of the most vibrant, creative and fun times in human history. And it's a lament. At its core, this movie is a lament that finishes with an act of defiance. Tarantino laments that this world has disappeared, that the Cinerama Dome has shut down, that dubious Italian westerns never get made anymore, and that instead of hippie culture, where materialism was rejected, we now have TikTok culture, where you only buy a Starbucks in order to take a photo of it and share it on social media. And a lot of the relics of this era disappeared because they weren't very good. The car radio is better with many volume settings. B movies that lost the studio tons of money were never a viable commercial prospect, and technology moves forward. Who doesn't love the convenience of Netflix? But just because all of this stuff has been supplanted and replaced doesn't mean it never existed. And when it did exist, it meant the world to people. People went on first dates with their future wives and husbands to the Cinerama Dome and other old-time cinemas. People lost their virginity in the backseat of crappy cars that never would make it through modern-day emissions tests. People who lived the hippie culture had amazing experiences that never would have happened and never did happen again when they finally went to work in bleak corporate offices for the rest of their lives. Much of modern media doesn't care to remind you of the past, of your past, and of the world's past. Because there's no money to be made there. No one can sell you a vision of the past. It's already happened. No one can pull the wool over your eyes. Instead, they get rich selling you a vision of the future. Buy my electric car. Buy the new iPhone 578. The latest top-of-the-range TV. The summer holiday of your dreams. We sedately march further into the fog of modernity, and we never allow ourselves the time to look back and see what we've let go, what we've lost, what we've forgotten, and what we have traded away. We imbue every object we ever touch with our memories, and then we upgrade it. Tarantino in this movie forces us to share his memory of the 60s. He yanks us back to the past, and we spend 2.5 very happy hours there. Cliff Booth, playing a stuntman, is one of the main protagonists in the movie. As a stuntman, he is often overlooked and underappreciated. No one remembers him. He is way down in the credits. He is the perfect metaphor. The reason Tarantino tries to draw attention to him is because he's trying to draw attention to all the things in life that are overlooked, the simple pleasures, the things that work perfectly well but get replaced anyway, the old times and the old timers. Speaking of which, Rick Dalton is a very old-timer actor. Not very professional, but he has raw talent. He drinks till late at night whilst learning his lines. He would not get hired by Disney today, but he made some great movies, and people have fond memories of the movies and shows he was in. He made an impression on people's lives. Sharon Tate has perpetrated the movie to remind us of the world she lived in, resplendent when alive and then gone before you know it. The arc of the story is about Cliff and Rick getting a sense that their time was drawing to a close. Work is getting sparser. The world is getting hostile to their very existence. The pacing is slow and the message is clear. Unlike the modern world, Tarantino isn't in a hurry. You can't help unwinding, as the movie does. We know Sharon Tate's destiny. We all know how the movie will end, and then we realise that we all have a little more power over our own fate than we realise. Tarantino has Cliff and Rick kill the Manson cult followers. Sharon survives, and Rick and Cliff potentially get an extension to their Hollywood odyssey. As Sharon Tate surviving is a metaphor for this whole era surviving, we can see why Tarantino made rewriting history the centerpiece of this movie. It's an act of defiance where he says the world can worship what it wants, but I know what's good, and I'm not leaving it behind. In the movie, the beauty of this time survives and lives on because this is Tarantino's fairy tale. Because the things others overlook is what he is staring at intensely. Perception is reality, and Tarantino is still very much perceiving the world around him through a refined lens of culture, tradition, nostalgia, and romance. All notions that have fallen out of fashion in a modern world that fetishizes disruptors and worships influencers. Today, your status rises depending on how quickly you break the established order of things. The more sacred cows you kill, the more clout you collect. Existence quickly becomes about the glorification of self. People seek to replace the image of God with their own image, so they take down the crosses and replace them with selfie sticks. They don't seek to create art, they seek to become art. They don't try to create something bigger than themselves, they try to become bigger than the world. Everyone nowadays creates their own cult and tries to gain followers. Everyone is Manson with an Instagram account. There's a reason we don't see much of Charles Manson in this movie. There is an absence of any singular villain on which to focus. This is because the villain of the piece is all of us. No one person eradicated this time, disposed of this culture. We all did it, little by little. This movie is a call to arms, an attempt at a fight back. Sharon Tate can't be brought back from the dead, but something of her ideals and of her time can be. Tarantino has made his choice. What's yours?